maintenance there and be careful about it. It's going to save us a lot of trouble. When we're on the road traveling and we have a gripe or discrepancy, it has to be taken care of for the reason of this type flying. And sometimes it's just not a small job, and there's no way around it other than just to do the job.
In order to fly a 6-airplane show, when you only have 6 airplanes to start with and you don't have any spares, it requires a fantastic effort as far as logistics and maintenance.
I couldn't follow my father's footsteps. I left home when I was young. I wandered free until a woman made me a prison of her love. The locks were eyes as pale as ghosts. The bars were her 2 lips of fire. The walls were arms that held me close. The chains were my desire. Oh, she won't let go. I gave her everything, and she asked for more. And Lord, I need her so. There's not a thing in the world I would trade her
The maintenance on the airplanes is sometimes a gigantic effort because the men will stay there and they'll work all night if necessary, a couple nights in a row, in order to have the planes ready for the show the next day.
Yeah, it's spelled out more often than I think we realize it, because you'll see men working 24 hours, 30 hours to get a job done. And these same men don't do it just once, they do it many times.
Your body can just withstand just so much. And we live normally about 3/4 tired all the time.
So this is where pride really comes in. It really shows. Like I said, a lot of times there's a lot of other things the men would rather be doing. They're probably out there working on an aircraft, but this is their primary thing, and that's about it.
And I've seen this happen a couple times where they worked all night one night and we got the show out, 6-airplane show, came back with another huge problem and they worked all night the next night. But they get the job done. And obviously, flying in the environment we fly in with very little margin for error. I leave a little bit of margin for my own personal error in there, but we leave no margin for catastrophic aircraft failure.
The circus? Yes, we all know about that. The flying circus. Wooden planes and iron men. But this is something else. Barnum and Bailey was never like this. Packing now to take this show on the road. What would your grandfather have thought if he could have watched these tents being folded?
Explanation 2512, is that right, Steve?
Yes, sir. The math that was I'm not going to bring it good.
Our biggest problem will be on aircrafts 1, 2, and 3, 5, and 6, a utility failure on the tanker. In the event we have this problem, stay on the tanker if you can with the probe extended, and have them swing around, toboggan you back on down, and stay on him just as long as you possibly can. Okay, we'll all abort back at that time, and we'll all be giving assistance as much as we possibly can on how much fuel to go, jettisoning drop tanks and things of that nature while you're on him. For Ernie, you've got the air system.
This circus is starting on the long road to Hawaii, but the planes carry only enough fuel to go halfway. It means that 2 times en route, flying tankers must be found. Gas stations in the sky. They're out there somewhere. They must be found. Otherwise, it's a long way from shore.
Okay, we got 50 miles to get in and start taking fuel, or else we're in a port.
We have an aircraft go in the water for any reason. We'll continue on track with our 2 remaining aircraft, switch into VHF guard frequency, which is 121.5, transmitting to any aircraft, airliners that happen to be in the vicinity with an absolute fix, attempting to get a hold of Ocean Station November, who will be the primary rescue vessel, and he will undoubtedly be the only one that you'll be interested in the water unless there's another ship in the shipping lanes. If it occurs prior to the tanking evolution being completed, our 130 will go down with you, put out his large life raft for you and extra survival equipments. You should be in pretty good shape. They should be able to fix your spot precisely. You will undoubtedly be in the water there for at least 8 hours in this business, so you want to get yourself into your raft as soon as you can and get yourself comfortable so you are exposed to the elements as little as possible. You spend the night in that raft, you want to bundle yourself up just as warm as you can, or you'll end up dying of exposure. Any questions?
biggest problem in moving the team to Hawaii was the fact that the distance involved required 2 in-flight refuelings at high altitude and high gross weight. To slow the F-4 down to 200 knots is an extremely difficult task to keep it in the sky at that speed. The only apprehension that I had personally on bringing an airplane over here is that if something would go wrong with the airplane, you'd have to eject from the airplane out at sea. It'd be tough pinpointing your position so that you could get a rescue craft to you. You never worry about having to get out. I think you're worried about once you get out, then what?
This is just another working day. This is every Monday morning played full volume. If you know your job, you know the routine. But here you have come to know that each encounter with routine can bring something new. How would it be, though, if you had to deal with that newness right at the edge of eternity? When you go out on this human experience, daring that final edge without a net, you are alone, but together. Solo, but still a team. At this edge, you are participating in an extraordinary harmony. And you never forget, it takes more than a single note to make harmony. Don't look for heroes here. These are men who feel elation, fear, frustration, joy. Every one of us goes with them, at least in spirit. And that's what counts in this kind of art. We need this kind of joy, this testing of our human limits, this escape from the old routines. This is a venture that fills a profound need, which we all share.
Okay, we'll walk down at Kaneohe at 1400 exactly. Well, we'll bring 6 planes, Steve, in behind the crowd, and I'll drop you and skip off. We'll be in the 360 around this hotel. Since the flight line is
Each
so
Blue
long
Angels
here,
show is more than a repeated performance.
relatively
The careful
flat,
planning before
and then
getting into
wrapping
these
it up
aircraft
as we,
covers a long
go on down
checklist.
toward the center
At
point.
each site, you need a new set of answers. What's the terrain? Where is the center of the performance?
Yeah, because
How do
of
we
the
find
left
each other
here,
in 700
we'll
cubic
let
miles
down
of sky?
a little bit more out
What
to
are the
sea,
call signals?
and then
What do we
wrap up
do
around
in an
the center
emergency?
point, go inside a diamond
There's no way
head,
to prepackage
and
that
come
kind
back
of
in
show.
for the opener. Again, the flight line starts just to the outside of the buildings there on Diamond Head and parallels the yacht harbor over here on the right. The important things, I think, are these big, tall TV antennas over here, which give us a real problem. When you are at the show site, it's very easy to survey it and determine where your obstacles are located. I try to take a helicopter or light aircraft ride at every show site, even though I'm flying in, flying around the show site. That enables me to get a very good feel for what the obstacles are going to be, where my various checkpoints lie.
You can't put a Blue Angels performance in a can and have it come out the same every time. There's no way to package it. Every time out, it's new. Every place is new. You have to find your own point of reference every time.
Pretty good pull around here now.
In the formation business, when all of a sudden somebody gets a little closer to somebody else, or maybe even scrapes a little paint off on another airplane, that probably is a good reminder to one another that you are in there playing a very serious game and that you can't afford to let things like that happen, which is good. And maybe it's good that things like that happen now and then, because you just can't get too familiar with this kind of work.
Coming left trail. Yep. Yeah, I'll give you a pretty good run in here. Okay, boss. I'll go flat on him, Chip.
The biggest problem on the Waikiki show was the tremendous turbulence that we encountered. Probably more severe than it was more severe than I've encountered anywhere at any air show site, which just meant the formation had to be loosened up considerably to fly the maneuvers safely.
Okay, let's be real smooth on this. A little bumpy across the inverters. Yeah, I would say it's going to be a little bumpy yonder. Hold on for it.
By now, you see, this is not merely speaking about flying. This is every high-performance challenge we have ever accepted, every threshold we have ever tried to cross. This is mortal human reaching for that harmony found in perfection. It surprises some people that we could ever build such fantastic machines as these, and having built them, that we could do such extraordinary things with them. This creature of the skies loses its mechanical identity. It reaches for those limits which we strive for with music, with dance, with painting, with sculpture. This man-machine being creates sculpture on the sky. This is an exercise in being alive.
travel continuously through those 8 to 10 months, putting on at least 2 shows a week, always on the weekend, and sometimes as many as 3 shows. It's a very long grind.
When your time belongs to everyone else, to the show, to the audience, to the travels, going home takes on a very special meaning. You know what it's like to have your own time. The Blue Angels' work is public drama, yet a very private experience for each pilot. People who share such experiences tend to keep their own company, even at home.
And we do things as a team. We fly together, we work together, and it's a closeness that we have here on the team that you wouldn't get in the normal type squadron or any other type organization. Possibly the astronauts have that type of closeness when they get their 3 team members to go to the moon.
I think to describe the other members of the team, let's say individually, every one of them is different, and yet they all have something that's the same about every one of them.
Okay, back out a little bit.
Okay, in that area, right there.
All right, hold. This one, I catch it perfectly designed. Put your propellers on. You ready?
Hold it, not doing a thing.
Okay.
Cruise right in there, right?
How tight? I wonder. I don't know. I imagine it'd be good enough for a one-time only if I told you.
Every man the lone eagle, every man the first one here in this virgin sky. And back there on the mystic horizon, the Red Baron and his dastardly cohorts. And sure enough, Paris, just beyond the next cloud. Mademoiselle from Armentières. And gone is all of the hinky-dink of today. Yeah. And in the witchery of that moment before the world turns dark, one can almost see that straight line through time between science and superstition. And all bets are off on what is real and what is not. Reality for the Blue Angels often takes the form of hard mountains hidden in soft clouds. And all of this too close to the show site, the way it is here in South America. The show at Quito, Ecuador, is from a field at an altitude of 10,000 feet. The brutally patient, cloud-enshrouded mountains wait on all sides. Thin air, rapidly changing cloud and weather conditions here are among the worst in the world, worse than anyone on the team imagined. But when you promise to perform a show, that's what you do. The show goes on.
I don't believe there's any place in the whole show season that we were more welcome, more warmly received. The language barrier might have been a problem, but the smiles, showed friendship, and that you could tell very easily that they were happy for us to be there. And I think, again, this made all of us feel a great deal prouder.
Es muy agradable el saber que quienes en el film hacían esas grandes demostraciones están con nosotros y que no son tan ángeles ni tan distantes como para no poder conversar con ellos. La barrera del idioma también, con un pequeño esfuerzo, trataremos de interpretar las preguntas que quisieran hacer ustedes y vamos a empezar por Steve. What's your full name?
Steve Shoemaker.
Steve Shoemaker. Usually your name is Steve.
Steve.
Usualmente el nombre que como le llaman a él es Steve. How old are you right now?
I'm 29.
29, sure?
I'm positive.
Thank you, Steve. Ahora vamos con Ernest. ¿Está casado? Are you married?
No, I'm not. I'm very much single.
Está muy solterito. También es otra buena noticia que tienen quienes admiran a este otro ángel azul.
Captain Mara, can you tell me something about the maximum speed of the airplane?
Yes, sir. The Phantom is capable of about 1,600 miles an hour, or 2.5 times the speed of sound.
Damas y caballeros, se ha iniciado el decolaje de Los Ángeles Azules. La escuadrilla original dio perfeccionamiento al famoso diamante de Los Ángeles Azules, que luego se convirtió en el distintivo de...
The air show at Quito, it was an attention getter, you might say, in that anytime you have mountains on either side and the mountains merge with the clouds, I'm not scared to go into a cloud. It's when you're just not sure where the ground is and you're trying to maneuver. And naturally, if you do go into a cloud during an air show, you're going to have to pop out the bottom right away. And if you don't know where you are and if there's a lot of hills around, then naturally you're going to have to be very careful or you're going to end up fatality.
Efectuado por los 4 aviones certífidos.
If for any reason you get into trouble on this one, just get in the burner and go right straight up over the hill.
You try to pull the plane around at that altitude like you normally do at sea level where most of our shows are flown. Well, when you pull the plane harder, it just shudders and it doesn't go anywhere. You kill off your airspeed, plus you don't have the power response at that altitude, so you've really got to be on top of everything, flying an air show under those conditions.
You notice that one big black cloud over the field? Okay, I'm trying to keep us under the clouds there, Ben. Okay. We'll end up flying a lot of air shows in this kind of weather. Water maneuver. Okay. Easing the power. And low power, 180. Okay, hold what you got, Wingies, right there. Rolling out real smooth now, descending. Boss, hold it, please. I've lost contact. Say again? I've lost you. Hey, get Steve up VHF. I can't hear any of his clouds. Or get him up UHF. Where are you, Steve? Where are you, boss?
We are faced with a 10,000-foot base altitude with a 22,000-foot mountain rising up to one side that is totally enshrouded in clouds. And my task was to come down a valley to
continue with the opener, and I found myself in afterburner trying to come around the corner. Unfortunately, I did go into the clouds there as I was approaching this ravine, and I kept saying to myself, well, you're going to break out any moment now, you're going to break out, everything's going to be all right. And then I thought to myself, well, that's probably the last thing, the last pilot thought that went into the ground was that I'm going to break out any moment now. However, I did break out of the clouds, and I was in the ravine, and everything did work out.
Okay, I've got him back, boss. We're ready to go. Okay, that's fun. Wonder if Tappy Toes is updated as well lately.
We ran into some problems with attempting to put on a remote show with the 800 to 1,000 foot overcast and driving rain, and attempting to roll in and out of some of the maneuvers. Going right into a thunderstorm type environment is rather a hairy condition that low to the ground.
After 3 maneuvers, my mouth was just like cotton, completely dry. I was perspiring much more than I do on practice ops.
We came in and did our maneuver, and it turned out that they were right behind us to do their 4-point cross. In effect, it looked like about a 6-point cross.
Which is spectacular about that one is it was not really an exceptional cross, and yet it dazzled so many people. Have all 6 airplanes right there at one time. They could have been upside down, or it looks like a Ringling Brothers flying circus or something.
We had just messed up on the timing.
So we just continued on in and did it.
Now that was certainly different. That was pretty good.
The air show was most enjoyable for us to fly because we were virtually unrestricted in the type of maneuvers we could fly. The crowd was so large, 1 million people, that it was impossible to fly an air show without overflying someone at some point in time. When you are allowed to cross, for instance, directly in front of the crowd, then it's quite a thrill for the people, particularly in the crowd, to see something like this.
The reception that we got from the people, I thought, was unbelievable. Their response is, I would say, at a much, much higher level than even in the United States. Crowd reception afterwards at the end of the air show, when we landed, it shut down, and we had that long walk across that field, charging through that crowd was probably the most difficult thing that I've done all year on the team. It almost reached a state or a level of you were almost scared for your own security. People mobbed you, and it was, but still a very friendly and loving atmosphere.
But when you get out and the people are just so overwhelmed, and there's nothing like a Latin crowd to show excitement.
That's it. 15 minutes of glory and the cold morning after. Packing to go home. Going home. This has been the last show for this team, this unique being which never existed before and will never exist again. Steve and Ernie are leaving the team. Their 2 years are up. If they wished to stay, they could not. 2 novice Blue Angels named Switzer and Beardsley will move into the vacancies. But that means it will be another team. Going home, the old team is dying. But a new team is on the way.
I'm gonna miss it. You don't think about it when you're in the air. You're still thinking so hard about flying the damn flight that you don't think about last flight until you've touched down and you slow it down and you say, it's all over, babes, it's all over.
I I won't miss some things, but I'll miss most things. I won't miss living out of a suitcase for 280 days out of the year as much as I miss the teamwork. Couldn't ask for better flying.
Never again will I fly on the knife edge, the threshold of absolute control of myself and my universe.
This is the crucible where all of that perfection begins. This is winter training, a new beginning. Winter training is where the fledglings hit the fan and high-flying thoughts come down to earth. It's a rude awakening. First, every time up there at that raw edge of ability and endurance, every time is a new time, a first time. Here's where you learn that this challenge will never change. From here on out, you'll be living on that magic edge, right up against the limits, where if you dare look beyond, you're staring directly into the unknown. Second, you learn what concentration really means. And third, you learn that all thresholds are really inside yourself.
Coming over the left wing. Ease the barn, I'll be thinking about your tuck under. I was looking at it almost head on, and there was an unbelievable mismatch in the wings. Yeah, you were slow on the top. Yeah. That last one was very unloaded there, Burner, but you're going to get those, and you got to fly them. Really, you almost had a 45-degree mismatch on the wings there at one time. I was up at the, trying to roll in place at 1 negative G up there at the top, and you just can't do it. That was quite a roll there, boss. Yeah, that's really bad news, huh? You're stopping your roll, and then all you're doing with your wings is you're pushing down and letting them roll around you. I sure hope you can see it, because I sure can. Don't you recognize that? Well, I couldn't recognize the wing mismatch that time. I knew something was not right. However, I was staying in the same position on Kevin, which indicated I had the same roll. What's the matter, Bernie? You tired? Well, I don't know, boss. That was a real weird feeling roll to me. I could not, when you said that, Jim, I tried to analyze which way my wings were mismatched because I had the stick position and I was maintaining the exact same position on Kevin for quite a bit of that roll, although it was not the right position. You really had it mismatched. Well, which way were they mismatched? It's really evident that you're riding that whole damn formation deep, Brenner. Okay, Dick. I didn't see as much cycling as I did the fact that you just were sitting deep in the maneuver. You knew to sit a little bit deeper than anybody else, Burner, and during the maneuver you were deep at the pull-up, and about through the 90 you drove it acute and stayed acute for the entire maneuver. Oh, you better stand by this time there, Irishman. Again, boss? I said you better stand by this time. Oh, boy.
When a bumped airplane comes back, it's a center of attention. Everybody wants to see the 600-mile-per-hour bad mark. No way to hide a mistake in this school. No way. A bad mark, everybody sees it. And it has a very serious meaning.
Okay, remember what we talked about on this echelon landing, Bill. You cannot drop deep. The best thing to have going for you if you're going to err is to be slightly aft, moving slightly forward with your power up. But again, you're really going to set yourself up if you overcorrect and have to pull off the power. But you pull power in close, you're going to drop him into the overrun.
Timing basically on most of the maneuvers was real close today. When we do that over the field, we'll be on the runway, and the objective is you want the crowd to just see these two airplanes just zoom up out of the ground. Get into the point where you hear me go by, and you know that you're just about there. You don't want to get much closer than that I was. The vertical rolls, I think, maybe a little bit behind me. I don't know how it looked to you.
On the pull-up?
On the pull-up. Yeah. Instead of getting this, It looked to me like if this is you, that we got about like that.
Upside down, just above the desert floor. This is Skip Umstead from St. Charles, Michigan, who graduated 76th in his high school class of 206 students. That was in 1960. Since then, he has learned to concentrate. Cautiously, slowly, wide apart at first, then moving in. Many yards away, then feet away, then mere inches. You think about 4, then 6 airplanes flying inches apart at 600 miles per hour. It's a form of glorious insanity. And how appropriate that it all happens against a desert moonscape, as strange and forbidding as the very edges of the imagination.
I know that there are, or I've heard that there have been accidents, and there's a few airplanes out there in the desert, but it's the old thing, you know, the typical fighter pilot outlook that it can't happen to me, and I think that's probably the thing that keeps most of us going in the profession. And all you can do is just hope that it doesn't to you.
What's in the outback of a pilot's mind? In that region of nightmare images, which must never interfere with the business at hand? What's locked behind those plate steel doors of consciousness, all sealed in fancy words, not to be opened until that final split instant, when you know you've gone over the edge, and the real limits, which you knew were there all the time, have caught up with you?
There is a state of mental and physical awareness in which I and my airplane are one. There is no separation between us. My will is its will. My movements are reflected by its movements, and my thoughts are only of it. When I am in this special place, there is no room for the luxury of fatigue or fear. There is no moment, there is no movement that does not demand total concentration. Rising skyward like blue angels, we are born on wings of fire to new heights of inspiration on the threshold of the sky. Kind of men who long to reach above the earth and touch the heavens with their hands. Rising skyward like true angels, they are born on wings of fire to new heights of inspiration on the threshold of the sky.